So a fresh new week has arrived, and here on this channel, that means one thing and one thing only. Every weekend, I post an episode of this series we do called Your Take Not Mine, where I turn to you, the viewers, to give me your hottest NBA takes of the week, based on what's going on at the time, and I then choose my favorite submissions and discuss them in a video. This week, we got some big news regarding some of the biggest names in the game, and we also had quite a few huge matchups go down, so we definitely have plenty to discuss. In order to submit your takes, I make a community post on either the day of or the day before the video, similar to the one that you see on your screen now, so if you want a chance to be featured in a future episode, be sure to stay on the lookout for that. Before we start though, I want to thank PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. PrizePicks is the most fun way to play daily fantasy sports and win up to 100 times your original entry. It's so easy to get involved as well, you just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. While we're all basketball fans here, they do offer pretty much any sport you can think of to choose from and play, so there are so many different ways to play, and the potential combinations are unreal. PrizePicks also offers tons of special promos regularly, such as Taco Tuesday and specialty free spaces for big matchups that come about every now and then, so you don't want to miss out on the chance to take advantage of those. For this week's entry, I will be going with Anthony Edwards to score over 27.5 points, and to sign up, go down to the link in the description and use code REFERENCE to take advantage of the offer, where all you have to do is play $5 to get $50 added to your account instantly. Once again, thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring the video. Now let's get back to the topic at hand. The first take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Mars, and he says that Austin Reaves is a top 30 player in the league right now. Austin Reeves' tenure with the Lakers has seen unprecedented levels of success for an undrafted guard who really isn't the most explosive athlete either. In today's NBA, we're definitely seeing a much larger amount of undrafted players being given chances and ultimately becoming valuable players in a rotation, but the ones that have succeeded have typically been specialists as either lockdown defenders or knockdown three-point shooters. The amount of shot-creating ball handlers that pop up out of the blue are very few and far between, because that type of skill set typically gets identified very early in the pre-draft process and provides the kind of upside teams are willing to take a swing on. The emergence of Austin Reaves in Los Angeles, the biggest market in the NBA, is crazy, and while there have been periods where the LA media have propped him up too much to the point that he got a bit overrated, he is now fully playing up to that kind of hype, and in some ways is even exceeding it. At the risk of sounding like one of the people who was overrating Reeves in the past, he is very much playing like a star in the making right now, and with all of the turbulence that has been happening during this Lakers season, he's been one of the few constants leading the way. As LeBron James ages, he has been willingly allowing others to take the reins, which has allowed Reeves to operate more with the ball in his hands. Even with Luka Doncic now on the team too, Reeves still has scored over 20 points 4 games in a row, and when you talk about what makes the Lakers a threat, you need to make sure you discuss them as a three-headed monster, not just a duo of LeBron and Luka. Reeves missed 4 games due to an injury in December, and ever since his return from that, he has been playing on another level, putting up an efficient 20 points and 7 assists per game. Going back to the original take, is he a top 30 player in the league? I'm not quite sure I'd put him that high, because that's the tier where a lot of the borderline all-stars come in at, but he is definitely not far off, and it's not unrealistic to think that he could get there in the near future. The next take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Jacques, and he says that the Memphis Grizzlies are pretenders right now, not contenders. Right now, the Western Conference has one team sitting atop everyone else, being the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then after them, there's a lot of close calls that are still being figured out. The Memphis Grizzlies are one of the teams right there in the conversation, fighting for a second place finish in the West, sitting a half a game back of the Denver Nuggets for that 2 seed right now, tied with the Lakers in the standings. Last season, the Grizzlies were forced into a bit of a gap year due to injuries to pretty much all of their best players, but now with Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. back back at 100% health, they've managed to pick right back up where they left off 2 years ago, and I feel like that isn't being talked about nearly enough. Before the season started, they felt like an afterthought by the national media, with conversations being had about how the West had passed them by and how their season last year set them back big time, and yet now, with their core back intact, they're just as in the mix as anyone, and are arguably better suited for playoff success than a lot of the other teams being given the benefit of the doubt around them. The Grizzlies are not a big market team dominating headlines, and they don't get nearly as many national TV games as other teams winning just as much as they do, so they've been flying under the radar pretty much all season long. And going back to the original take, here it's probably coming about because they're not a flashy team that the average fan gravitates towards, but allow me to get into why I disagree with them being called pretenders. For starters, they check a box that almost every single NBA champion from the last 20 years has checked, being that they are currently ranked in the top 10 of the league, both on offense and defense this season. Jaren Jackson Jr. is once again the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year. They have a deep rotation filled with two-way players that take pride in competing hard, and offensively, they're back to pushing the pace with Ja Morant running the show with his blistering speed. What makes me even more willing to buy into them by playoff time is the fact that Ja Morant isn't even close to playing his best basketball this year, yet they're still winning at a rate reminiscent of a contender. Ja Morant is putting up just 21 points and 7 assists per game, shooting the ball pretty poorly, which is a down year by his standards, so if we're able to turn things around even slightly and return to the player that he was 2 years ago, they have even more room for improvement. They don't have a real glaring weakness, they have star power, and they have a ton of depth. So while I wouldn't call them one of the favorites to win it all right now by any means, I cannot get behind the idea of them being called pretenders either. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes to us from Diet Beer, and he says that if the Thunder don't make the finals out of the Western Conference, then the team that does will be one of the teams from the play-in tournament. This is basically a continuation of our last conversation, where we're now looking at the rest of the Western Conference landscape. The West has been a bloodbath this year with 11 teams legitimately fighting for a playoff spot, meaning there are a lot of really good teams down in that 7 to 11 range of the standings, and it's not unrealistic to think that they could make a deep run after seeing quite a few play-in teams make conference finals runs over the last few years. The teams in this range are the Warriors, Kings, Timberwolves, Mavericks, and Suns. The Warriors just traded for Jimmy Butler and have won 7 of their last 9 games, so they're starting to round into form at the perfect time. The Timberwolves were in the conference finals last season, and despite struggles adapting without Karl Anthony Towns this year, they still have a lot of that same core. The Suns have one of the most expensive star trios in the whole league and desperately need things to work out, or else they could be headed for an uncomfortable offseason. And the Mavericks just made the boldest trade the league has seen in quite some time, so when Anthony Davis recovers from his injury, they're going to be under a lot of pressure to right the ship and make a run. If you're asking me, I think the Warriors have the best chance to make a deep run from this group, with a lot of championship experience already in that lineup, and a newly inspired Jimmy Butler bringing a history of playoff dominance to give them that missing spark. Outside of that, the other teams I could see making the finals are probably the Denver Nuggets with Jokic at the top of his game, and outside of that, it's a lot of maybes. I see where their head was at putting this take together, I just don't think I'm all the way there with the idea. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the takes discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.